What's going on? This is Quamon Fowler, the Texas tenor, coming to you where I'm going to talk about a lesson on technique and concept. When you develop as a musician, we have to always deal with both of these particular areas because it's going to require us to have good technique in order to be able to express the concepts and the ideas that we hear and the things that we want to do. So one of the first things that we have to deal with when it comes to technique, what I say is very important, is having a great sound. Of course, on the tenor saxophone, and even if you play the trumpet or another type of brass instrument or a woodwind instrument, first you need to have a good sound. So one thing that I did, I would always work on long tones. So let's put this up here so you can see it, because we're going to go through a few of the things here on under the technique side. So in order to develop a good sound, one thing that I did is work on long tones. And long tones is just that. You hold out a tone for a long time. So check it out. Okay, and if you've noticed, my sound was consistent, you know, because when you play a long tone, you'll realize how sometimes your muscles will be moving around different ways because you're not used to sustaining it that long. But that really helps to build up the muscles in on your embouchure so that you can know the sweet spots that you need to get in order to produce that sound the way it needs to. And what happens when you do that, at the bottom of the horn, when you play low notes, you know, you can develop a good sound, a good quality sound that'll make your sound a lot thicker from the bottom all the way up. So I would work on playing long tones and just go from the lowest note on the horn, hold it for a long time, then I go to the next note that's a half step up and hold that for a long time. And I would do it, and eventually my sound would sound a lot better because I worked on the long tones. So now let's move on to uh, another thing that we cover on the technique side. Scales. So everybody knows that some of the first things that they learn after they learn how to produce a sound on the instrument is learning the notes. And when it comes to scales, scales help your dexterity. Excuse me. But scales help you to get around on the instrument. So one of the things that I did once I learned my scales, I started practicing something like this, um, where I take the scales and I play them going up half steps, but I would go from one all the way up to the nine and come back down and land on the next scale that's a half step above. Let me demonstrate that right quick. So of course I went through all 12 keys and I went all the way up to the nine and came back down and started on the next scale a half step above. So it's good when you work on stuff like this because when you keep that consistency, you know, it really will get your fingers used to moving like that. And it's really good for you. I recommend that you work on stuff like that with a metronome because that metronome is consistent. And so when you got a consistent point of reference that you can weigh yourself against, it can really keep you moving forward and build you up to where you need to be in order to build your reflexes up. Okay? So when we go from sound to scales, another thing I liked to work on was arpeggios. And arpeggios is basically you're playing the 1-3-5 or 1-3-5-7, depending on if it's a triad or if it's something with the seventh in it, the arpeggios with the seventh. But let me show you an example. When you do a scale, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You move stepwise. But if you're going to do arpeggios, then you're going to move every other note. So let me show you. That's the B flat concert, 1-3-5-8, or the octave. That's the arpeggio. But for instance, one thing that I did when I would work on my technique, I would also do scales to where I play through the modes of the major scale. I didn't demonstrate that yet, but that's something that you can work on as well, playing through the modes. But you can also take arpeggios as well through the modes. So let me show you how you do that. Okay, so I took my modes, I played through the arpeggios over the C major scale for me, and I just played through the modes doing that. And of course, all of this stuff you can take and put it in the other keys. I'm just showing you the C scale or key of C because it's easier. Okay, so this is just an example. All of this is building up your technique. And another thing we want to do after we work on arpeggios, you have another thing that you can do to develop your rhythm. Well, it's a lot of things you can do to develop your rhythm. Actually, working with a metronome really helps to make your rhythm better. But also, when it comes to rhythm, it's all about you being able to feel what you're doing in the context of other things that's going on. And there's a lot of different aids and things that you can do to help your rhythm. I recommend, and I'm not going to get a lot deep into this, but when you have play along tracks where you can have drums to go along with, even if you thought playing along with the metronome was boring, you can get some drum beats that you're used to or some drum beats that you're not accustomed to and work on playing your scales and arpeggios in time with these drum beats. Or you can make some if you're that technically savvy and you have some audio software, you can work on creating some beats for you to work on your scales if you think it's boring to play with a metronome. Okay, I'm just kind of running through these. Another one to go along with the technique, you have to be able to have at least some vibrato and also articulation. So, because all of this is going to help you better communicate and express your ideas so that people can really feel what you do. Um, and all of this, of course, once you've gone over all of this technical stuff, of course, when it comes to you expressing yourself conceptually, you'll be able to do it. So let me give you an example with vibrato. What I would do with a metronome when I would work on vibrato is the actual wave, in my sound. I would work on that. So that's an example. I would take, you can do half notes, you can do dotted quarters and quarter notes. I'm talking about the wave that you would put in the actual note. You can have a metronome on or a groove or something and just hold one note once again and just let your vibrato go through different cycles, where you can do slow, bigger spans of vibrato or you can do smaller, faster vibrato. And all of that will really help your muscles, and it's good exercise for you. The last one, articulation, that deals with the attack on the note. So see, the way that you can feel that rhythm and that jerk in my sound and the way I play that, that's articulation. And a lot of that stuff I learned from listening to other musicians, other guys. So we covered a lot of things on the technique, and I'm kind of running through this stuff, but this is kind of just a way that you can really think about, consciously really think about some of the things that goes into the technical side, so that you can get over the mechanics of the instrument, and it'll prepare you to be able to express yourself better for the concept side. And so what I'm going to do in the next video, I'm going to start talking about what goes on the concept side.